Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Visibility Era. Today, we have two very special guests with us. We have Shelby and Vannyda at Qwoted, and we are just very grateful to have you both here today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us. It's so
Thanks,
exciting.
guys.
I want to tell you all how I found Qwoted because I think this is interesting for our audience, our guests, and probably for Qwoted as a company as well, which we'll go into in a moment of what Qwoted is. But I was perusing Reddit one day and I typed in Haro alternatives and I wanted to see, what is out there? What are people using these days? And I don't know if either one of you use Reddit. Lydia knows I'm such a nerd with this kind of stuff, but there was all these forums and many, many people shared Qwoted. So that is how I found Qwoted, and very grateful that we have this resource and have you both on the show right now.
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's
I,
so
I feel
funny.
like somebody at one point got into they were like, oh, has anybody seen we're all over Reddit? And then it was just like this like hole that we got into. We're like, this is incredible.
That's so funny. Before we got on today, she was like, "Do you think it's weird that I tell them I found them on Reddit?" I'm like, "I bet they're so amazed at how their clients find them." And for me, I would think like some other media professional, but for those that are just like perusing the internet and they're like, "How do I get featured?" or whatever, I think that it's a great source. I love Reddit. So,
Yeah.
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 Here we are.
It's amazing.
So,
Yeah.
for our audience who doesn't know what Quoted is, they've been living under a rock and they just have no idea. Can you give us the just nitty-gritty of what is Quoted? And then we'll go into each of your roles and a bunch of other questions that we have for you both today.
Yes, absolutely. So Qwoted is a platform connecting media with brands, communication professionals, and small businesses. Through network technology, we're revolutionizing the traditional media market and helping more people around the world share their expertise. At the moment, the community is growing with over 100,000 members, 80,000 brands, and some of the top publications that we have on the platform include New York Times, US News World Reports, NBC, CBS, you name it, and there's thousands more where we produce hundreds of stories a week using Quoted.
That's amazing. I love that you just said 80,000 brands. And what I personally love about Coded as a publicist and a media professional is that everyone what I've heard is that everyone really loves the user experience with Quoted. And I think because the user experience is so robust, it really opens the entry to all these big publications. So, like the New York Times, I've gotten what Women's Health, Mind Body Green, Business Insider, like all of these big names use Quoted, which is really incredible. So thank you for that intro. And Vannyda, while we have you, can you tell us what your role is at Quoted and how it could help maybe just the customers, or what it is that you kind of do on a day to day, I guess?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm the head of media success. So I focus and support all the members of the media on the platform. That includes writers, freelancers, producers, podcasters, and really just holding their hand and helping them through using the platform itself. That also includes, when they're looking for a source for their story, we're doing some research and outreach on their behalf, just making sure that they are getting what they need. So yeah, again, just focusing on helping them out with their stories and their pieces.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's so important. um, when we are coordinating or helping our clients coordinate interviews on Quoted, I really like the way that everything is set up. There's like profiles, and it makes it very easy for people to create connections. It truly is like such a networking platform. So thank you for all that you do. And Shelby, can you tell us what you do and what your day-to-day role is as well?
Yeah. So we always like refer to Vanita and I being counterparts. Like it's almost like we're complete opposites. So I support the opposite side of the network, which is our brands, our PRs, our agencies, our free users, paid users, kind of overseeing that full team. And ultimately, I mean, the goal is to make sure that one, you understand how to use Quoted. We like to think that like the user experience, of course, is very good, but people will get tripped up on certain things. So making sure that they get their profiles, their accounts set up, and they're just increasing their visibility, getting in front of as many opportunities as possible, and getting out there and helping the journalist out as well.
So cool. Yeah, we love it. And it's funny that you said that you guys are both counterparts parts because it's kind of like Lydia and I too. Like I have been the speaker, the one just trying to get my name out there, using platforms like Quoted to get my name out there. And Lydia has been the one, behind the scenes and helping her clients do this. So we are all a match made in heaven here. Now, I'll just plug this. So if anyone's listening, go to Quoted right now, like pause the episode, go to Quoted, sign up. And then Shelby, why don't you start to walk us through how someone should set up a profile? Like what's really important for them to be listing or including what matters?
Yeah, I mean, I think like obviously, like you guys said in the beginning, like the reason I found Quoted was because I went and looked up like Haro alternatives. And I think that's commonly where it's like, oh, I can go and reply to journalist queries, or we call them opportunities on our site. And so the difference though is that journalists can also come to you just based on your profile, how you set yourself up in the network. So when you go in, going to your profile immediately and just filling it out. I know it sounds so basic and simple, but it's like putting in details about yourself, your credentials, your background, like your expertise in certain areas. One, it helps, you know, verify you in the network. So when you are pitching individuals as journalists, they can see more about you and your expertise. But then two, it helps our system put you in front of the right things. It's helping the system do the work to make sure that we're recommending the right things to you. We're sending you relevant opportunities as soon as they become available. But also, if a journalist is out doing a very relevant search to your expertise, we're putting you in front of them saying, hey, contact this person. They can speak to exactly what you're saying. So it's just the more you can fill it out and the more robust you can put in those details, it helps our system do what it's supposed to do and get all those relevant opportunities right in front of you.
So our clients, we mostly work with experts, but we also work with product-based brands. And we've had a lot of questions around like, well, am I going to be pitching all the time? Like, what do I do? Like, how does this work? And we love sharing that Quoted is an alternative that they can use where we like to say like the media comes to you. So I really do love that when you set up your profile and pay attention to those details to create more of a robust profile for yourself, the media truly does come to you. So you can scour, the site and take a look at the different opportunities that are available. Paying attention to the time frame or the deadlines, but also they actually do reach out to you. So that's what I think makes it such a beautiful networking tool is Haro, is great, but it doesn't create those connections like Quoted does. And I think that's where Quoted is really standing out in the marketplace from what we've seen on a media side and a client side that they really like. So on to our next question. We're going to like be a little heavy on Shelby for a little bit, just to give you the idea of like, how do you actually create this profile? And then we're going to move over to the media side of like, okay, how do we make this really successful for both sides? So how do you look like a credible source from a media perspective when you're setting up your profile?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like distinct sections in there, so there's the basic things like bio. I think those details are really important, but even something as simple as like your title and company, like showing the
Mm.
brand you're associated with, putting in your links associated with that brand as well. Also, when you're pitching, you want those links included in there anyways, because that's what you want the journalist to see. That's what you want them to include in the article. So filling out all of your social media, all of your any links to any brands that you're representing that you're pitching on behalf of, your photos. I know it sounds so silly to be like, oh, make sure you put a profile photo in there, but we do see like for anybody who has a profile photo pitching versus those that don't, journalists are 3 times more likely to engage. Like when we pull those statistics every single month, it never ceases to blow my mind where it's like, oh, it's as simple as just having a face and real, like you're a real person. It's helping a journalist just know I'm working with somebody who's a real person and I'm just more likely to engage and respond that way. There are a couple of other sections in there, like there's a media section where you can upload content, anything that you've been featured in, any links, articles, something that you kind of showcase your expertise, the work that you've maybe done with other journalists, or even uploading like blog pages that you've written or research articles that you've done to just showcase that expertise overall. There's nothing that helps verify like, oh, I can speak on this subject. Here's several relevant examples of where I've done it before. And then there is a recent quote section as well. And that's more where you're just pasting in content of topics, articles, anything that we can point to, like your exact commentary of what you've had. And you can update, you can adjust, you can tweak those over time, as things become more relevant in your industry. But just filling out that account, getting it to that 100% score, just because that also is where our system's saying, I'm more likely to recommend you to a journalist because I know more about you. So I'm going to rank this profile a bit higher in the network because now I know a journalist doesn't need to go research you outside of the platform as well.
Bridget, are you sitting here like, oh my
I took
gosh, I need
notes.
to?
Yeah, I was like, I need to update my profile. And for everyone
Same.
listening, like these are those nuggets of gold, even like the recent quotes and just the media that you've already secured. Shelby, this is incredible.
Yeah, it's like I do this every day.
Yeah. Every day. I want to give our audience kind of that next step. So say someone's listening and they're like a mental health therapist. They make their profile. Now they come to that point where they want the opportunities. So what are some of the best ways to match the opportunities to their skill set and, their title and their credentials?
For sure. I mean, the one thing, of course, is like you do want to get notified about opportunities, right? That journalists are posting. They're looking for experts in your space. But the thing about Quoted is it's going to be across all industries. So there's a lot of things in here. Like if I'm a therapist, I don't want to see or hear about cryptocurrency or these other areas. So at the top of your profile, you have your hashtags, and that's going to allow you to just put in the topics and your areas of interest that you want to be notified about. So anytime an opportunity is posted to our site from a journalist and a hashtag in that opportunity matches a hashtag in your account, that's when Quoted's emailing you directly saying, hey, jump into Quoted, take a look at this. This might be a good fit for you. This is right in your lane or your area of expertise. So the more you can kind of get specific with those tags and put them into really areas that you want to get notified about. So that way you're seeing things as soon as they become available. You have some time to work on the pitch. You're not having to come and scroll through our site each and every day. You do have a full-time job, most likely. So you don't have time to just sit and scroll through Quoted and wait for those right opportunities to come up. We should just notify you as soon as they become available. But I also think like, you look at something and it's so simple to go into your account and be like, okay, I'm a therapist. And it's like, okay, great. So we'll notify you about anything that has therapist on it. But sometimes people will just put something like so generally where you have to think about what's happening in your industry. What are topics that you want to drive more awareness, more engagement to? Like, I mean, for therapy, I think next week, right, is May. So it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And so it's like, okay, well, how can I set up my profile so that knowing that journalists over the next month are going to be coming in here a lot talking about Mental Health Awareness Month, how can I proactively fill out my account so that I'm getting notified about those relevant opportunities, but also journalists are coming to me because I'm already proactively listing these things in my account. So kind of just being more proactive about those trends, those subjects, things that aren't just so generalized, but like those really specific areas that you do want to drive more traction towards.
Thank you to technology. I love that you can optimize your profile and make things faster. It's so funny. Right before this conversation, I was coordinating a client call with a Forbes writer. And one of the main topics we were talking about is like efficiency for small business owners and how using these types of tools really, really helps make you more competitive with the bigger brands. So I really, really love this. For anybody who is listening, make sure to pause, optimize your profile. And honestly, like this is like a how-to guide. So thank you so much for this. I do have a
Yeah.
question around like timing for opportunities. So something that I've noticed that Quoted does, and I really like this, is they allow, I don't know how you do it on the back end, so this might be a question for you, but allow writers to say like, I have enough for this, I have enough sources for this story. And there's a deadline on everything as well. So what would you recommend? Like how quickly a source should respond? I'm sure it varies, but like what would your recommendation be for this and the timing of opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, Vanita might have a different answer than me on
Yeah,
this
this
as
might
well.
be.
I guess but like on my side, at least, like working with users, trying to increase response rates, engagement, interactions with journalists that they see.
Yeah.
Um, you know, the sooner the better, as basic as that sounds, but it also depends on the request itself. Sometimes you might go in and that journalist may have 10 to 15 questions. That takes some time. We don't want you to rush that. We want you to put your thought in, everything there and make sure that you're putting together a really good answer. But sometimes they're saying, like, I'm just looking for an expert. Once I find the expert that I want to work with, I'll send over questions. I'll send over more details of what I need for this story. So that's where it's like the faster you can go in and just quickly say, like, hey, I'm perfect for this. This is why. Let me know what you need, the better. But other times, if there are a lot of questions, take your time, fill them out. If a journalist has that many questions, most likely they're not having a 3 to 4 hour deadline. Usually it's like a 6 to 7 day deadline. But that being said, a journalist doesn't know how quickly they're going to get responses. Sometimes we surprise them and we put a lot of really good sources in front of them really quickly. And so they might say, even though I had a 7 day deadline, I got everything I needed in 3 days. So I want to let everybody else know that they don't have to work on this anymore. So they can
Mhm.
come in and sort of turn that off at any point or say, I got what I needed.
Yeah, I find that so helpful for even me as a publicist doing like agency work. There have been times where, I've sent along a opportunity to a client. I'm like, "Hey guys, like this is happening. Let's get your
Mm-hmm.
responses in." And then I have seen that the sources were closed. And so in this case, it actually helps me know what's going on cuz I'm the liaison. So I'm always like, okay, what's happening on the client side? What's happening on the media side? So for me, then I can actually use those quotes and repurpose them for a pitch outside of Quoted. So I really, really do love that. All right, Vanita, it's your time to shine. We're moving on.
All right. I'm in the hot
But
seat.
you're in the hot seat. Honestly, both of you guys can answer whatever. But we did kind of break it down thinking about like, okay, so we've got the profile on the client side. So now we're going to, or, the expert, the source. So now we're going to go to the other side of the media professional. So how do we best interact with media professionals? Like, what are they expecting from the client, or I keep saying client because that's my frame, but what are they expecting from the expert, and how did they like to interact as well?
Yeah, I would say the way to approach media should come from a place where you're going to want to build a relationship with them. Like, you never know what they're going to need in the future. Um, and it's also focusing on what is the query and the need at the moment. Like,
Mm,
there are times when of course, there's going to be this transaction and it's maybe unspoken, but you want to avoid selling your product or your client to them and just focus on helping them with what they need at the moment because, you know, they're working on a tight deadline. They just need the quotes or, the answers to the questions to make sure that they are meeting their deadline and getting their story in. To Shelby's point too, like responding to them in a timely manner, that's going to be super helpful to them as well. There might be a request that says, the deadline's in 5 days, but if you can get to them as quickly as you can, they might be, getting what they need already, and they don't need those 5 days. And so that's how I would approach it. Also, at the end of the day, you know, I do believe that, journalists and PRs, they kind of need each other to do their jobs, right? And so that goes back again to building that relationship with them. You want to foster it and making an effort to be available, whatever it's, convenient for the both of you, whether that's, keeping communication through the messages or offering up a call, trying to figure out each other's availability and um, that's also helpful as well. Another thing that I'm just also going to mention is do not ghost the media. That ties back to, if you aren't available or maybe your client isn't available for that opportunity, just let them know. It's a courtesy, and you might even find that it's going to be beneficial for you at the end of the day. Just being responsive, they might come back and tap you for a future story. And again, if you can't meet their deadline or, yeah, you're not available, um, that gives them the time to, find another source quickly because that's also helping them to just meeting their deadline.
The biggest thing I'm really taking away from this is what Lydia and I talk about all the time, which is building the actual relationship. Like I think sometimes with the internet, we forget that the person on the other end of the screen or the message is a human too. And at the end of the day, this is a synergistic relationship. Just what you said, Vanita, like everyone needs each other here and everyone works together as a team to, produce the best content. And yeah, like they might get a feature out of it, but it really is about working together as a team and remembering that I think from like our audience's side, where we've seen the pitches not land is when they're just like interview me instead of providing the value that that writer actually needs. And this kind of brings me into a hot topic in many of the conversations we've had in the podcast lately with writers, which is that they're getting AI pitches. And there's a source who is just responding copy paste, they put it into the GPT thing, I can't even say it right, they put it into chat GPT, and it's giving them something. So talk about, Quoted's parameters around how they're handling AI.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we know that AI is big in the industry and definitely not helpful in the journalism industry, but we do have mechanisms in place within our system where we arm reporters with tools to help them out with checking for AI generated content. So, uh, I'll kind of talk about an example of things that kind of get triggered. But say, for example, a reporter submits a request, there may be 10 questions listed, and someone might come in and pitch that opportunity very, very quickly with all the answers to those 10 questions. That's something that we kind of note to the reporters like, hey, this response came in very quickly. There's a chance that it might be, AI generated. You may want to check GPT-0, which is the tool that we do provide to them to check. And it's our suggestion for them to just kind of be weary about it. Um, and then on top of that as well, like if something might seem fishy and they are seeing some responses that, might be AI generated, they can always flag that to us as well there's a reporting button. And all that does is flags it to our team so that we can kind of investigate a little bit further. Um, they can just keep in mind that it is anonymized. So it's nothing that we, share with any other users, but it's just for us internally to be able to kind of see what's going on and for us to kind of help them as well.
That's such a good answer. Thank you. And I think authenticity is something that we have to remember when it comes to media and media responses. Even if you decide, like say you decide to use AI and somehow it gets picked up. This is what I think about just scenario wise. Imagine seeing that exact response in multiple places and it not being connected to you and your authentic answers. And it's just at the end of the day, don't waste your time with that when it really comes back to your brand and your brand values. I think just in general, authenticity is something that is really valued now in the marketplace, and the smoke and mirrors is just not a good idea. So, thank you so much for that. Speaking of practices for introducing ourselves to media professionals, what have you seen to be the best way to introduce to the media? Like, how are the media, I guess, like, how are they, what would they like to receive when they're receiving answers from experts and sources?
Yeah. So this can vary a little bit, but I'll kind of
Hmm.
share what I've seen and like some maybe tips that and Shelby, you kind of share these tips with your PRs and experts as well. But I would say, when you're looking at a request, you want to make sure you're reading it carefully to make sure that you're checking if you are a fit for it. Do you have the requirements and do you have the credentials that the reporter wishes for in a source? So that would be like step number one, um, because the last thing a reporter will want is someone who might be irrelevant. You don't have the credentials because that would kind of cross you off the list already. Um, Going back to answering the query directly and following their instructions, I think that's key. If they have a preference of the way they want to be pitched, and that's in the description of their request, try to follow that as much as you can. If they ask for quotes up front, provide those quotes up front in your initial message. Same thing goes for if they have a list of questions and they just need those, upfront as well. Be sure to answer them concisely. Um, Again, it varies for many different reporters. Some of them will just want to hear what kind of expert you have. And so if that's the case too, um, it's helpful to provide a bit of a summary of the expert and how they can be valuable to the story. So a couple different, I know there are a couple different answers within that question, but it definitely is different for every person.
Yeah, I love that you both had said answering the question because this is something that me as a publicist, I'm like, answer the question. And another thing is like, don't be salesy. And I think that this is where media training is so, so important. And I love that you both are saying that something similar, but at the end of the day, like they're looking for credible sources to help make their stories better. And so if you take an opportunity to bring it back to you, you're not really actually helping the greater need that is there. And I think what ends up happening sometimes is we think that we're actually doing a better job or a better service to our business by being salesy, but you're actually doing a disservice because you look like more of an expert when you're answering the question and not trying to like plug your brand every day. Have you seen that on your end, like businesses that are like coming in and trying to plug a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think Shelby can speak to this as well.
True. Shelby,
Yeah,
do
I
you have
mean,
anything?
even on my end, sometimes it's like, oftentimes a journalist is writing a story, and the reason that they need sources is because they don't know a lot about that topic. So they're
Mm,
seeking experts on that topic. And so sometimes somebody comes in as an expert and they like regurgitate this like expertise, but it's like, hey, like now they're still having to like simplify this or break this down. So it's
mm,
like you need to break it down for that journalist. So it's like you're telling a story. You're not just explaining something that you learned in college or something that you do every single day that it may sound really easy to you. And so I think that's some people come in and they'll just, like I said, they just like it's just like this knowledge, very factual, but it's hard to quote, but it's also hard still for that journalist to understand or that for them to then break it down to their reader. And so it's like you need to humanize it a bit and break it down. Like, can I explain this to a 5-year old? And not that every reader is a 5-year old, but it's like if you have to think about the audience that this is going to be in front of. And then you don't have to answer every
mm,
question. I think sometimes it's like, maybe there are 10 questions, but a journalist might, maybe they thought they were looking for a cardiologist, but a cardiologist can maybe only answer 3 of the questions of the 6 that they listed. Say in that thing, like, hey, there's 3 other questions in here. I don't think you need a cardiologist for those. I think you actually need a dietitian or a pharmacist or somebody else. And like these are the reasons why I can't speak to that. I think that's part of that relationship building, saying like, I think maybe in your request you also should request a couple of different types of experts because I can only do these questions justice. So I think that's all about for you don't have to be so focused on just putting your brand out there and just giving them all these answers. Make it really human, make it to like relevant to what you can speak to, and they're going to come back to you again and again because you broke it down and you can make it relatable to your expertise. So it's kind of what I have to, I'm sure you can relate, Lydia. It's like reiterating that every single day to people. It's like, you don't have to, like, nobody understands what you're saying. So you have to change the way that this is worded.
That's also why we're giggling because this is a conversation that we have a lot. I think
Yeah.
it's when you're in your own silo of your own business and your message and just what you do on a day to day, it is hard to extract that into
Yep.
layman's 5-year-old's terms. So that's actually a lot of what we do with business owners. It's like dumb that down for us. Like
Yeah.
what's the book, Lydia, that you always refer to?
Oh, do you guys remember this series? I bet you they still have it at Barnes and Noble, but it was like computer science for dummies, like mechanic for
Oh yeah.
dummies. Honestly, that was a genius series and company because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, we don't know what we don't know. And I think it's really important to meet the writers where they're at or just meet your audience where you're at, always thinking with the audience in mind. So we say this a lot, like say you're, I don't know, you're in the spiritual space, but you're talking to Forbes. Forbes speaks in more of a like very logical, very business sense. So maybe we switch our words from manifestation to like attract, or if we're a dietitian and we know a lot about vitamins or something, and we're speaking to, well and good. And that is a publication that can speak in that language, but their audience might not know. So maybe if we say like vitamin K, we also give a little description of what it actually does for you. So I love this conversation so much because we do talk a lot with our business owners about like how do we media educate? How do we help them explain what they do? And it also helps you get featured. So I love that Quoted is named Quoted because you're literally getting quoted for a lot of this. I think that the site is really user friendly for experts, which is amazing. But you also cater to product based businesses too. So it's just so great. I want to switch gears. We have a lot of writers that are in our network. And we have a lot of freelance writers that are in our network. From what I understand, there's like a job board too, right? So how does that
Yes.
work? Yeah, I would love to hear more.
Yeah, for sure. So we do have an area for all of our writers to check out our jobs board. It is an area that we aggregate all these jobs from, top tier publications. There might be some brands in there as well. But it's for everyone. If you're looking
Yeah.
for full-time freelance remote jobs, you can definitely check it out. There are also a bunch of different filters that you can use to narrow down your search. So it's based on location, publications that you might be interested in, but it's definitely a hotspot for lots of our freelancers. And we just put it all in one place so that our media community can easily access it. Um, Also, just to note, I know that rates are an interest to lots of the
Yes.
writers. We include that as much as possible whenever we do have that information on hand. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much jobs board. We do add new job opportunities every day as well, so folks can keep their eyes out on any new ones that come in.
Yeah, that's so helpful. Thank you. We are friends with a lot of writers that mostly like post opportunities when they see them in their Substacks or in their LinkedIn. But if you're not connected to these individuals and you don't know where to go, it's such a nice place where it's just an additional source. Especially, I feel like writers, props to you out there listening because you are the real hustlers. It amazes me. Certain freelancers, they are just getting bylines in all these different places. So I really like that you're opening entry for that. Thank you so much.
I have a question that came into my mind. Is there a story behind the name Quoted? Like how did that become the name of the company? Do you guys know?
I know that I've met the person that came up with it, and I don't remember like it was. I think they were just spitballing, and they were all like at like a company dinner. Our CEO, he has an agency, and it was like one of the girls that works with the agency, and they were just spitballing ideas. And she was like, "What about quoted?" And they were like, "Yeah, well, it can't just be simply quoted though. Like we have to like change it up." And they're like, let's make it a little bit different. Let's throw a W in there. And so it's something like that. But I just remember they were spitball and there was a few different ideas. I'm glad they landed where they did because I didn't like the other ones.
No, it's so, so good. What else is on the radar for Quoted? Anything else that is exciting that either one of you want to share or anything that's, helpful for our listeners and community?
Gosh, I mean, I think you could ask that on like a weekly basis, right, Vanita? There's
I know.
our development team is incredible. They're constantly like I think we have like a release like every week. It's crazy. And so even if they're maybe not things that you see changing with your experience on a day-to-day basis, there's always just like crazy things happening, but we are moving slowly into like a newer, more upgraded, enhanced version of Quoted. I don't have like a timeline on that or anything, but there's a lot of just really cool functionality, just cool features that come with it. We've seen it. Vanita's seen it. I've seen it. It's really, really cool. It's very updated. The technology is much more advanced, so it should help just, especially for these individuals who are in very specific industries. I think it'll help kind of just curate your opportunity feeds, the opportunities that come into you a bit more, your messaging, your interactions. It's got more of like even more of a network feel. So I think it'll be really, really exciting once we can finally launch that.
Wow, thank you. Quoted, you really walk the walk when it comes to networking and humans on the other side. I mean, we ended up connecting with your team just by simply asking questions and also recognizing us. Like we tagged you, I think, in something and that started the
It
whole
was a
thing.
YouTube video that I
That's what it
posted on
was.
Oh
LinkedIn
yeah.
because I was like, I love
Hmm.
this platform. I'm going to show it to everyone. Yeah. Just like
Yeah.
that. So yeah, it is all about the relationships. Like all of us here know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so
Yeah.
much for walking the walk and just making it super easy for us to connect with you, for our audience and our listeners to really hear from your side how to use Quoted to the best of your, their ability. So thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening to another episode of Visibility Era, the podcast.